My name is John Leenhouts. Call sign is Lights. I put 27 and a half years as a Naval Aviator. I retired as the Commodore for the Strike Fighter Wing Atlantic with the rank of Captain. My whole beginning in life started out in Texas, where I was born in 1950 and was enamored with air shows, traveled around the Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Utah area. My father was a roughneck in the oil business, so we moved when the rent came due. One day I was visiting grandparents down in Fort Worth, and they had an air show in a place called Carswell Air Force Base at the time. And I went at 16 years old. I hitchhiked, which you could do in those days, from about 30, 40 miles away, and walked around the ramp. And next thing I know, I'm talking to some guy in a green flight suit standing next to an F-100 Super Sabre and asking what it was like to fly those. And he was so exciting to tell me all about it. And I said, how do I get to become you? And he said, well, you just got to go to school and work hard and hope you have good hand-eye coordination and give it your best, son. And so at that moment, I said, well, you know what? Maybe I can do that. So I put my heart and soul into it, ended up going to Oklahoma State University and learned how to fly there, and joined up in the United States Navy a couple of years before I graduated in a reserve program. And then I went to flight school in 1974, got my wings in 1975, and was selected, fortunately enough, to become an A-7 Corsair 2 pilot made by Vought, and shipped out to Jacksonville, Florida for a place called Cecil Field, and fell immediately in love with this really cool light attack aircraft called the A-7 Corsair. It was single seat, single engine, and it was a beast. It took a lot of runway to get airborne, but if you carry almost its own weight, it weighed about 20,000 pounds dry, but you could put 10,000 pounds of fuel and another 10,000 pounds of ordnance, and away you go, and you were a lethal dominating force in the sky. It was designed for attack, air to ground mostly, though it carried air-to-air missiles. And I love the airplane because it was very responsive. No matter what you did with it, it would tell you what you would tell you what was going to happen before it happened. So if you're getting close to a stall, it would give you this bone-jarring buffet and say, you better knock this off, release the stick a little bit. And it just gave you such a feel of responsiveness, just barely moving the stick, and that baby would just leap in the direction you put it. And because it could carry so many varied types of ordnance, it made it interesting. And of course, anybody likes to go out there and do a little target shooting. Well, we had a gun, we could drop bombs, and they were guided missiles on there. The Sidewinder missile, we could carry that. And so you could do any number of missions with it, and it became a very enjoyable aircraft to fly. And coming back aboard ship with it was a true joy, because as long as you stayed ahead of the engine and didn't let it wind down too far on you, you could get that airplane to give you a OK3 wire almost any time. Fortunately enough, I got to fly the airplane all the way through the Gulf War, which we didn't see coming. We were in the process in our VA-72 with the skipper of the squadron was the name on the side of the airplane you're looking at there. That was Commander J.R. Shooter Sanders, great gentleman, and he was the commanding officer. I was the executive officer, and we were transitioning to Hornets, and literally in the middle of the transition, we got a call on a Friday afternoon that we were going to the Gulf on Monday morning. So we literally turned all of our airplanes, the Hornets that we were starting to receive, we turned them back in. We got our A-7s back. We trained up everybody. We did carrier landing practice at our outlying field. And literally on Monday, we shipped all of our equipment. And Tuesday, we flew our airplanes aboard John F. Kennedy, and we headed east. And 10 days later, we're in the Mediterranean. We stayed in the Mediterranean for about a month or so. This would have been in August of 90. And we stayed there right up through about the middle part of November, as I recall. And I think that we headed through the Straits of, or headed through the Panama Canal right there before Christmas. And we spent Christmas and the early part of January practicing low-level missions, because that's what we thought we'd do, using nap of the earth to protect our radar signature. And then we would pop up and roll in and drop bombs on Iraqi targets. And after a couple weeks of practicing that, the intelligence officers gave us great wisdom, and said they had so much anti-aircraft equipment that their guns were literally everywhere, and then we'd probably fly through a barrage of bullets and anti-aircraft fire, and that would be a very lethal scenario that we didn't want to do. So we decided to go high, and then we would come in between 25 and 30,000 feet, and then we would pick up targets and roll in on them. And so we started practicing that at night because we knew the first missions were going to be at night for us, a lot of them. So knowing that, then we started practicing the high-altitude HARM, high-speed anti-radiation missile profiles, because the first thing we had to do was to remove the eyes and ears of the Iraqi Air Force so that they couldn't see or hear us coming. And that was to mean we had to take out all of their acquisition, track, and fire control radars. So literally the first night of the war, which is January 17th, we started launching off in the John F. Kennedy in the Red Sea. And we launched out of the Red Sea in about 1,000 miles to target. And we had about 40 airplanes that we marshaled up together on, I think, 5 different tankers at different altitudes from 20 to 30,000 feet. And we all took on fuel till we were all topped off. And at the time, we had 6 A-7s from our squadron, VA-72, and 6 from our sister squadron, VA-46. And I was the strike lead for this. And we had 2 EA-6Bs. I think we had another 12 Tomcats, a couple of E-2s to help with that, and away we went in country. Now you got to remember that this was our target time was 0200 on January 17th, so we literally took off on the night of the 16th. Took about 3 hours to get everybody fueled up and across before we hit our targets. And then as we went in country, everybody turned their lights off, and so we were all running on profiles that we had pre-briefed for altitude separation and speeds. And we got on these marshalling stacks, and then we got ready to go. And then exactly at 0200, we started launching our high-speed anti-radiation missiles against our targets. And our particular targets were MiG bases called H2 and H3, which were to the west side of Iraq. And our goal was to take out their radar capability to track us. And apparently it worked, because they were not operational the next day when our boys went in first thing in the morning with another lead. And J.R. Sanders was on that flight lead in an A-7. Helping the F-18s from Saratoga that were also on that flight. Now, in our night flight that evening, there was about 400 aircraft, Allied aircraft, and that was everything from F-15s, F-16s, F-18s, A-7s, A-6s. There were Tornadoes, German Tornadoes. They had Brits flying and Jaguars. I mean, the whole world was out there, F-111s, and nobody had their lights on. So 400 aircraft and a piece of sky like that, all going as fast as you can go, is a pretty hazardous environment. But the way we survived all that is by altitude and time separation. So you had specific points that you had to be at on time at a set altitude. And if you couldn't do that, you didn't go across the border. You stayed outside. But we all got in, and then you turn around and you went out on what they call these minimum risk routings, which is a special route that deconflicted all the airplanes so you didn't run into each other. So to tell you that the hair was standing up on the back of my neck, the answer is absolutely yes. So it was interesting as they were running in towards the target. I'd never been shot at. Actually, I don't think any of us had, by AAA or SAMs. And we're sitting down there looking on the ground and we're wondering why all the house lights are flashing at us. Well, it wasn't that. They were shooting AAA. And then we started having flak bursts up around our altitude. And then you'd see these blazing lights of looked like a Roman candle be coming out of the ground. And those were the surface-to-air missiles, 2s and 3s that the Russians had given them. And so that was a pretty hairy moment to try to dodge all that, get your weapons off onto a target that you couldn't see. We're shooting them at about 40 to 60 miles away, and then turn around and get yourself back out of there. And then you got to go back and find the tanker again, jump on that tanker, and then you turn your lights on and join up with the wingman, and we go back as flights of 2 rather than this flight of 12 that went in there together. And we did that for about 6 nights, and we progressed from owning the sky so they couldn't see or hear us coming, and we were then able to go in with precision-guided munitions, which were, for the A-7, was the Walleye 1,000 and 2,000-pound TV-guided weapons that you could launch off about 40 miles away, and then you had a television in the cockpit, and you actually flew the bomb all the way into the bridge or to the ammo depot or whatever your target was. And then we also used standoff wide attack missiles, SLAM, that would Slam with the extended range. We could launch that at about 50 miles. And those you could actually pick the city, pick the building, and pick the door you wanted to go in on. And we launched several of those. And then once we went through most of our precision munitions, then we went to what we call general purpose bombs. And these were 500, 1,000-pound, and 2,000-pound bombs that we just dropped, and they were ballistic. So we would roll in from 25,000 feet, and we'd probably pickle the bomb somewhere around 15,000, and then we'd be pulling off. But we'd do those in groups of 12 airplanes, going after ammunition depots, rail headings. We were looking for Scud missile sites. And so, that was a pretty exciting time to be hanging in the straps in a 55-degree dive with another 11 airplanes all beside you, and they're all looking down at separate targets, all within a mile of each other, but we're dropping general purpose bombs. And then we switched over and did what we call APAM and Rockeye, which are cluster munitions. Each bomb would cover a field with 104, I think it's like 400 little bomblets that would explode. So that would go after Republican Guard, and then we'd go after the highway from hell. That's where they were trying to run back from and retreat, and we'd take out all their tanks and armored cars. And all the way along, there would be periods when there wouldn't be too much activity. They were trying to shoot at us. But I can remember with literally only a couple of days to go in the war, we went on a night mission back to the same H-2, H-3 MiG base, and we were going to bomb it with general purpose bombs by lighting the sky up with these big flares that float down from parachutes. And I dropped a couple, and as soon as I did, the whole world erupted down there. They'd rearmed, and it was totally a mass chaos trying to get your bombs off, and they're shooting at you. And it was pretty scary, to say the least. But we got it all done, and good news is the A-7 was the only platform that made it all the way through the war and never had not a single round of enemy ammunition came through it. We came back with all the airplanes except for one, and the one airplane we didn't come back with, our good friend Steve Dosty had taken a cat shot and his nose gear broke apart, and he had to come back in and take an arrestment because he take a barricade with the arrestment in aircraft 403, and we ended up stripping all the parts off that and just pushing over the side because we were the last A-7s to fly in the Navy, and then we were transitioning to Hornets. So we had a really great Gulf War, and even though the missions were typically about 5 hours long, and you'd launch off late at night and come back before the sun came up, or during the daytime, they were fun in the daytime because once they stopped shooting at you in a great degree, because we come back down after you get off the tanker, you jump on with another wingman, and you go down on the desert floor, and we would literally race by the Bedouins out there and chase the camels, and it was cowboy fun, if you quite candidly, and we had a really good time. We got so good at that, when a full moon, we'd go out there and do it at night. We'd go down in the canyon and be flying down there at 500-600 feet above the desert floor because it's pretty flat, and just had a great old time. Before the war, we'd actually got a chance to fly in the canyons on the north side, and we'd go down there at 460 knots and race through these 3,000-foot canyons that are that deep for 25, 30 miles and chase each other. So that was a lot of fun. And so then, the war was over, and, we brought all the airplanes back, and we switched over to the Hornet, and away we went. But as I reflect back on all the excitement of being in naval aviation and having the good fortune to fly with some incredibly talented folks and fly some awesome airplanes, because I not only got to fly the A-7, but then I flew the F-14 for about 10 years, and I got to fly in the F-18 for another 10 years. And so all of that combined made me, kind of quandary the question, well, what makes you a good aviator, and to be able to do all of that? And it really is, it boils down to, you just got to have a really good heart. You got to be focused, motivated, good hand-eye coordination, and you just got to want to do it. And don't give up. And don't be afraid of it. You're going to take a little risk. There's no two ways about it. But you overcome the fear with the confidence necessary to accomplish the task, and don't be afraid of it. Embrace the excitement of it, and make sure you can think quick on your feet and respond rapidly, and you'll be an excellent aviator, probably better than me. And then the part that defines carrier aviation from everybody else is obviously taking off and landing on a carrier, and that takes a lot of skill, a lot of focus. It's basically the Olympics for aviators. but it takes every ounce of energy you have, both mental and physical, to execute this precision approach where there's only literally inches or feet of error you can make. And you got to keep your speed within plus or minus a couple of knots, and you're giving it everything you have to get that airplane in the wires at 170 miles an hour on a pitching deck at sea. And literally, if you're too short, you hit the ramp. If you're long, you miss, and you go back in the sky, hopefully when you add the power back on the airplane and fly away. And so doing that during the day is exciting, to say the least. Doing it at night is absolutely petrifying. There's no two ways about it. I got used to the daytime stuff, but the nighttime was absolutely petrifying. And you never got used to it. You just did it. And you try not to think about it, because all you got is a pin light out there, and it's out in front of you. You can't see anything. Up and down doesn't exist anymore. There's no horizon. There's no earth. There's no sky. And you're just driving towards this light until you get right inside of about a quarter of a mile. And again, at 170 miles an hour, you're trying to negotiate this pitching deck, and your aircraft bobbing left to right. The aircraft carrier is going to the right all the time, staying into the wind, and the deck's got a 10-degree angle. So it's a Herculean effort, but you just do it because you're trained how to do it. We've got a lot of time and prep for that. So, yep, it's exhilarating, it's rewarding, and it makes you feel really proud of what you've done for your country. And I would tell anybody that if you're thinking about being a Naval Aviator or an Air Force pilot or an Army helicopter pilot, put your heart and soul into it, focus on it. I've always said that you got to live every day like it was your last day. Make the most of it. And remember, you don't get to choose the cards you're dealt in life. You only get to decide how you're going to play them. And if you play smart and take advantage of every opportunity, then you're going to come out a winner. So hope you have a great day here at Tillamook. You enjoyed a little story about the A-7 Corsair and its great value to naval aviation over its history, and the Air Force for that matter, and all the Air Forces around the world that flew it. It was born in combat, and it died with its boots on. Have a great day.